5.2, we're doing trig functions, okay, like sine, cosine, tangent. You should remember Sohcahtoa from geometry class. We'll do a little bit of that. But basically, a trig function is going to be a relationship between the angles and the sides of the triangle, okay? So maybe we should write that. Say between an angle and two sides. When we're talking about a trig function, there are 6 of them. Okay, we're talking about the relationship between an angle and two sides of the triangle. Okay, so they're defining where the angle is. So you can see in this picture they've drawn this angle. Okay, but typically we're going to want some point, some xy point. Okay, some xy point, and we're going to need 3 quantities. We're going to need that x number, which happens to be this distance, and we're going to need that y number, which happens to be this distance. And if you'll notice, what they've done is they've defined a triangle. Okay, they've defined a triangle, and the hypotenuse of that triangle happens to be r. Okay. Where this comes from and why that's the letter R and not like C when we normally do the hypotenuse, okay? We're going to use something like the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, to find this hypotenuse. But basically what happens is when you form an angle, let's say there's a point at the origin, and if we rotate it around, okay, rotate that point around, or rotate, I guess, this side around, that's where the angle is. Okay, we've rotated it, whatever that angle is right there. Okay, but if you notice this point, if I took this point right here and I rotated it all the way around 360 degrees, you should kind of see a circle. Okay, and the radius of that circle just so happens to be the hypotenuse of that triangle. Okay, so the reason they're using the letter R is because it's the radius of that circle. Okay, now we don't see a circle, and so maybe it's a little confusing, but you definitely see a right triangle there, and that's going to be important. Okay, so how do we find that R value? Here's a formula. Okay, this formula can be used to find that R value. Now it's very similar to Pythagorean's theorem, finding the hypotenuse of a triangle. Okay, so if you don't remember this formula and you can remember Pythagorean's, do that. 6 trig functions. Okay, 6 trig functions. You probably know sine theta, cosine theta, and tangent theta. Okay, but they are specific relationships. If you go back and you imagine that picture, okay, that picture that they just had, there was like a triangle, and this was the x value, this was the y value, this was the r value. Okay? The trig function is talking about a relationship between an angle and two sides of the triangle. Okay? I want you to remember sine goes with y. That's going to come back. That's going to come back again and again. If you can remember sine goes with y, that's going to help out a lot. Okay? So the sine ratio is y over r. I want you to remember cosine goes with x. Cosine theta is x over r. Okay, it's the relationship of two of the sides of that triangle. Okay, so remember that sine goes with y, cosine goes with x. Tangent, the relationship or the ratio is y over x. Now a couple of things. Remember Sohcahtoa? Sohcahtoa from geometry class. Remember sine was opposite over hypotenuse. Okay, opposite over hypotenuse. So if you're looking at this, if you're looking, let's say this is your angle, okay, and if you look opposite and hypotenuse, that's y over r. Okay, so we're really talking about opposite over hypotenuse. Okay, and cosine theta, we're talking about adjacent over hypotenuse. We're talking about adjacent over hypotenuse, just like Sohcahtoa from geometry class. Okay, tangent, we're talking about opposite over adjacent. And so if you remembered this from geometry, that would take you a long way. It won't take you all the way. We'll do a lot more stuff in this class in trigonometry with our triangles than we did in geometry. So that's not going to be enough, but that'll be a pretty good start to remember Sohcahtoa. Also, something to notice and something to remember, tangent is talking about the slope. So if you can remember that, that will help you going forward and on into calculus. Tangent is talking about slope. Okay. So those are the three main trig functions there. There are three others, the reciprocal functions. The reciprocal of sine is cosecant. Just flip it upside down. The reciprocal of cosine is secant, so secant theta flips cosine upside down, reciprocal. And the reciprocal of tangent is cotangent, so that's going to equal x over 1. Now, something to add on to there. When x is on the bottom, that formula only works when x is not 0. Okay? And when y is on the bottom, same thing. This formula only works when y is not 0. Otherwise, it's going to be undefined. It's going to be an undefined angle. Okay? We don't have to worry about that for r, because r will never be 0. If you think about r as being the radius of a circle, you can't have a radius of a circle be 0. Okay? So there are your 6 trig functions.